Hello and welcome to Lightways at Life Astrologer with me, Anna Isabel. And I'm just so excited because today we're doing something very different. And that's because Christine Chalklin is with me today. Hello, Christine.
Hello, hi Anna. Hi, lovely to be here with you.
Well, I when I discovered that you are using Bach Flower Remedies in an astrological context, I
Mm,
couldn't resist. I needed to know more.
yes.
So So tell us, first of all, for anyone who might not be familiar with them or might have heard of them but don't know exactly what are the Bach flower remedies?
Well, the flower remedies are, they were kind of discovered or brought into consciousness by Dr. Edward Bach in 1800. He was born in 1886, so and died in 1936. So we're talking about a long time ago. And he felt that we needed a different healing. He was a doctor, a homeopath, a surgeon, and he felt we needed a natural way of healing, which could be found in plants and flowers. So after working in Harley Street, he was very successful. He then decided to stop it all and go into the countryside and talk to the flowers and the trees, as you do. And so off he went with his assistant, and he felt that the answers were there, that there was a different healing remedy for each kind of state of mind, emotional state. And so there are 38 different flower essences, flower remedies, whatever. And this was his kind of system of healing, which was then completed just before he died in 1936. And they are now, I don't know if he ever thought they would be so world renowned as they are now. And they're available pretty much everywhere in every country. And the training courses are offered everywhere in different languages. It's just kind of an amazing thing that someone such a long time ago was a man well before his time. He was Sun Uranus, so one would expect that, of course. and But they have become very kind of mainstream in a different sense of the word, if you like. A lot of uh, vets use them when I was training. A lot of people training were vets or training to be vets used them with animals, and it's been said they have them on flights. British Airways uses them, not all of them probably, but just to help, because they are all about helping to balance your emotional well-being, your emotional sense. So possibly a lot of people know about the rescue remedy. I don't know if you've heard of that one. It's kind of an essential, and I think people kind of maybe discovered it more with children or teenagers who were then doing their driving tests, and people said, oh, this will help with fear and anxiety, or with exams and things like that. So they are a completely natural way of helping the body kind of realign with its natural path. And I think he was very clear to say that it doesn't treat any illnesses, any diseases. It's just all about your emotional well-being, which I think, as we know now, as science has progressed, that a lot of these things are caused by dis-ease within ourselves, and they then come out as illnesses and so on. And it's about alignment, really, the kind of alchemy of aligning with our soul purpose and our personality and everything. And for me, being an astrologer, of course, I thought, well, what better way to start than have your blueprint, your map, your astrological chart, and then you can really start to see, what might be needed in there.
Funny, you were talking about vets
Yeah.
when you were training that there were vets
Yes, yes, there were several. Yeah.
because the only time I've ever used rescue remedy was for my cat.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, Maxie had been out and he had been attacked by another cat and had a terrible fright. And we then discovered that he was injured.
Mm,
Um, and so we gave him rescue remedy. And if
yes.
I tell you that from then on, he expected rescue remedy every night, there must have been something in there
Yeah.
that he felt was beneficial. Uh,
Mm,
and
mm,
he expected it every night, uh,
really.
which was very, very sweet. And so, and I had, it's an episode which I have nearly forgotten.
Mm.
but us talking has brought it to
Yeah.
mind.
I think
That,
it's an important one also that to know that they can be used with animals, they can be used with children, with babies, with plants in the garden, and they're like a homeopathic remedy. They're completely harmless. They don't interact with any medication, and so they are quite safe. And of course, the people who say, oh, it's all nonsense, it's all placebo, well, I don't think we know it isn't placebo with animals and children. There's something working there. We know that. And yeah.
and I am not going to be so ready to dismiss the power of placebo, because
No, it's a
if
good thing, I think.
if everybody placebo and help them heal, what a wonderful thing that would be.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so just you mentioned homeopathy a couple of times.
Mm.
What difference between the flower essences and homeopathic remedies?
Well, homeopathic remedies are prepared in a different kind of way, in a more kind of directed way. They have to be shaken and other things they do with them. I'm not a homeopath, so I don't know, but exactly. But I know they call it homeopathic method, but they're not quite the same. But they are the same in the fact that the dilutions are so weak that you're not, even though the flower essences contain flowers, trees, plants, by the time we take them, they're so diluted. We're talking about vibrations, nothing to do with any. It's not like a herbal remedy where you actually are taking in a herb, which you would have to sometimes be careful about contraindications to medication. But these are completely natural. And if you had them examined, I mean, they are actually in brandy, usually brandy or vegetable glycerine now. They've changed that somewhat, because I was just thinking about your cat. Maybe your cat liked a little nip of brandy in the evening. And,
No, no, that wasn't the case then. But just, you know, thinking about the fact that a lot of them, have water or are in water. So what's happening is that the flower or the plant is being put in water. And what we now know about water is that
yes, yes, well,
water
I know.
doesn't just carry energy, but also has memory. And
Yes,
with the
exactly.
wonderful experiments that Veda Austin
I know.
has done,
Yeah, yeah.
shown water that remembers seawater, that where you can see the imprint of the fish that last swam
Yeah,
in that bit of
yeah,
water. So it makes you understand then what we didn't understand before, is
no,
that this is possible because water is an extraordinary substance
exactly.
that
Yes.
has carries energy, has memory, and so somehow you don't need a lot. You
No,
can dilute and dilute and dilute because
no.
it appears that water can transmit um, memory from one source of water to another source of water. And
Mm,
we've seen that where, again, Vida Austin has done experiments where water that is healthy
mm,
and happy comes
mm,
into contact with tap water, and
mm,
that is really unhappy, if we can put it,
mm.
and has a healing effect on the tap water. So
Yeah.
this shows then how it's possible to dilute and still have that
Mm,
energy. So now that we've got that, the how and what
mm, mm.
out, let's talk about the links with the chart and astrology. And you said that the chart can be a blueprint then,
Yes.
or the remedies. Tell us about that.
Yes, I mean, going back to Edward Bach, I mean, he was very interested in all kind of esoteric things and astrology and Far Eastern sciences. But I think the flower essence, his idea was that they would be very simple and that they weren't really to be corrupted by other things. He was quite adamant with that. Having said that, he did write quite a few things about correlations to moon signs, which you would think, well, yes, if we're talking about emotions and feelings, it would be the moon sign. Although some people have kind of translated that to sun signs as well, but I don't think it matters, because I think the first 12 remedies that he discovered or started to use, 12, do correspond to certain astrological signs. So that's kind of the first thing that I would look at if if I'm working with astrology. I mean, I do see people just for flower essences without any astrology, and then really the whole therapy is talking, asking the person how do they feel. Often they'll say, oh, well, I've got this shoulder ache, but we're not looking at the shoulder ache, we're looking at what's actually going on. How do you feel about it? And then you'd work on that. But obviously with the astrology, if you've got your chart, you can have a look immediately and see, okay, I can see there are natal things here, challenges, maybe a challenge to the sun, that the person is experiencing, and so you could look at various remedies for that. And the moon signs, certainly there's a specific one for each of the moon signs, which I
So
use.
can you list some examples of
Yeah.
matches?
Yes, well, I always start with with the impatiens, which is the remedy for Aries, which kind of is a link with the name. Aries sometimes can be a bit impatient, and so that's kind of one that can help with that kind of temperament that's very kind of on the go and needs to maybe kind of calm down. And I mean, it is a fascinating study if you actually look at each of the flowers in turn, and what was he connecting with. I mean, when he looked at impatiens, he meant the wild impatiens, not the kind of impatiens, busy Lizzie, the cultured one. It was the one that grows on the riverbanks that we've probably all seen. It's pink, pale pink and beautiful, and
That
it
the Himalayan
lines.
balsam.
Is it called that? It might be. Yeah. I mean,
That's the
it's
one they're trying to eradicate now, if it is the Himalayan balsam.
well, they
Um,
better not. We need that.
exactly.
I think
It seems to be invasive. So
yes, but I mean,
yeah.
it's mostly along the rivers. We don't kind of get it in our gardens or anything so much. But it was interesting because the seed pod of impatiens, if you touch it, have you ever done that? And it
Oh yeah.
explodes. And this is the temperament of someone who's possibly impatient, exploding, and then needs the pink, the pale pink of the flower to kind of calm down. So that was his kind of connection with that one. Um, and so on through. I mean, I can give you some other ones that are quite interesting. Well, they're all interesting, they're all fascinating. Taurus is gentian, is the flower gentian, which is a kind of blue flower that is kind of for doubt and discouragement, and maybe also for being a bit fixed in the ways. And I mean, I look at other ones that could connect with that feeling or that emotion, but that is one that is quite used. The sign of Cancer is clematis, which is kind of for kind of being in the past sometimes, or I mean, some of the keywords, it's a bit like astrology. You look at the keywords that were written maybe in his first book and you think, oh, for Cancer and for clematis, it's kind of indifference, boredom. And you think, oh, does that mean every Cancerian has that trait? But there's a lot more to it. And I think over the years, many people have written more kind of things. It's just like a bit of a cookbook, the original words, but you have to kind of expand on those and look at what else could that mean. And so it is something like thinking, what is that the history of clematis, and the flower it's the wild clematis again, is very kind of feathery and light, and the idea would be that it would help the Cancerian person to align with themselves rather than being kind of in their head or worrying about. I think worry is one of the things with that particular flower remedy, that it brings you back into focus, and there are other ones that can do that as well. And what have we got? Libra, for example, is a plant. It's not really a bright flower, and a lot of these things we don't know. I mean, I know when I started, I thought, I don't think I've ever seen that one. I knew the impatiens and I knew a few others, but scleranthus is a kind of a very thin kind of green flower, and it helps. It's about indecision for Librans and helping them to kind of focus and not kind of go each way, and kind of focus on where they're going, what they're doing. So that's one that would help in that. What else have we got? Mimulus is the Capricorn remedy. I'm just going to do a few because I want to talk about some of the others. And Mimulus is for fear and worry. And that is a kind of little yellow flower. It's interesting that there are quite a lot of yellow flowers within this. And I mean, I think, that they were just the ones that spoke to Bach as he went through the countryside. And, he touched each flower and communicated with it. And, kind of connected with what that could bring. And I think in this instance, it was the mimulus stands up very tall, and it's very kind of erect and very kind of full of confidence. So, thinking that would be for fear and worry, and the bright yellow would help to clear the mind, so that was the kind of thinking.
Because we're thinking in terms of balancing, it's like
Yes.
an antidote too.
Yeah, yes, it is. It's kind of the opposite of what that person might be feeling. And I mean, again, these aren't really all set in stone, although I sometimes think it's good to have the moon remedy, because it is about emotions and feelings, so we are working with that really. And just to see, and I mean, the beauty of all of these are they are completely harmless, so you could take all of them if you wanted. Well, there'd be quite a lot of brandy, but well, I mean, in the end, once it's been diluted and you've diluted it again, it's traceable really. There's not very much in there.
And are people just taking them as you would a tincture, a few drops on the tongue, or are the drops put into water?
Yeah, they would be put into water. You buy them in a little bottle, and then you put those drops, because they're in pure alcohol in brandy. Although, as I said earlier, over the years they have kind of started to work more with vegetable glycerin, because a lot of people don't want the alcohol or can't use it, or giving it to children and so on. Obviously, it's better like that. Yeah, so there's a choice. People can choose. I mean, it's very little alcohol, but you would always need to ask the person if that's okay with alcohol, for whatever reason, if they don't want to take it. So by the time you've diluted it from the small bottle into your treatment bottle, and then you would fill that with water, spring water, and then put that into you could put that straight in, like you were saying. It's already diluted though. And usually you could put up to 7 different remedies into a treatment bottle. So, depending on what things have come up, there'd be a kind of a theme. And then that little bottle could be either dropped straight into the mouth or into a drink, as long as you finish it all. And that bottle would usually last about 3 weeks. And by that time, hopefully, the system is like peeling an onion. People would start to feel a shift of some sort, that they're seeing things differently, feeling differently. Yeah, and I mean, I've had incredible results from people who said, "Oh, what's in there? By the time I got home and I'd taken them, I felt differently." And others say, "Well, I've taken them for 3 weeks. I'm not sure. I don't know if I've noticed anything." But it doesn't really matter, as long as I think one of the main things is talking about what's actually going on. For a lot of people, that kind of session of speaking about it is a big healing in
And,
itself, isn't it?
and sometimes shifts happen within people, and
Yeah.
they don't realize it, because it's almost like they've forgotten what they were like before. I have instances, and this is my hypnotherapist hat on, but I
Yeah.
have numerous instances where a client has a session, we do the work, and then the next session I say, so, how are you? Have you noticed anything? And they go, well, no, not really, not really. And I say, okay, so last time I worked on this, and these could be problems that they've had for years. I mean,
Yeah.
decades in some
Yeah.
instances.
Yeah.
And I say to them, so this is what we worked on last time. And they look at me like they've had amnesia. And they say, gosh, I'd forgotten that. I'd forgotten that I was like that, or that I had that issue, or
Yes.
they've
Yeah.
had it for like decades, and
Mm.
they've forgotten.
Mm. Mm.
So it can be sometimes that we ourselves
Mm.
don't notice the change
No, I don't think we do.
because we forgot what we were like.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, when you're thinking, what am I like? We see ourselves in very different light to how other people see us. And it's people say it's quite better probably to have somebody help you select your remedies, rather than, as I said, some of them, you'd say, well, I'm not this, I'm not that. I mean, one of the remedies, the chicory remedy, which is connected with Scorpio, it is kind of a bit harsh. It says if you're possessive or demanding, And you know, who's going to say, oh yes, that's me? You know, it's mostly, oh, it's not me. So it was also a lot of kind of diplomacy that you could it be this, could it, you know, because we wouldn't, you know, or are we stuck in a rut, or are we stubborn, or, you know, don't want to connect with other people? There's all these things that we might not admit ourselves, but maybe, you know, if it's said, it might start to get something moving, that they might think, oh, it could be that, or it could be, you know. And just one other remedy, the heather remedy, which isn't connected necessarily with a moon sign, but it is for people who talk all the time and can't, you know, we all know someone who, when you say, oh yes, you know, and how are you, or then they say, how are you, and you start, and then they carry on telling about yourself. So and it is to do with when you, I mean, he saw that as heather growing all over the hills and not letting anything else have a chance, you know. So, but you probably wouldn't admit to being someone who can't stop talking and wanting to take control of all the conversations. You know, you wouldn't necessarily admit to that yourself.
I would encourage people to do a little experiment and
Yeah.
to just sit with a plant that you feel drawn to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that you know a little bit about, and just think or allow yourself to imagine what that plant suggests to you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you could find that much of what you write down or think of actually already corresponds to that remedy
Yes.
that's been created.
Yeah.
Because I had a very pleasant experience actually about 2 days ago. So it had been recommended, certain remedies had been recommended for my partner a year ago. And I'd forgotten what those attributes were for. But each time I prepared the remedy for him, I would imagine and set an intention that would be helpful to him with something that the plant suggested to me in my imagination, and which I knew he needed, corresponded to something I knew he needed. And I went to order them again, and for the first time came across the descriptions, and I very excitedly was, you know, noticed that the intentions I had been setting, according to what the plant suggested to me, matched the descriptions that I was reading.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's how it works.
Yes, that's partly how it works. Absolutely.
That's how it works, because at that imagination level, we are connecting with an energy that is that the plant brings to us. And so there it was. So I thought that was a lot of fun, and very, very interesting. So I think it's worth playing and seeing what you come up with. So has the palette grown since his passing, or are we sticking to just the ones that he worked with? Has anybody else, I guess, extended the work is the question I'm asking.
Not his work, no. I mean, I think he made it very clear that his work was done and dusted. He died at 50, so at his Chiron return, he died, and he said, my work is complete. And I think he was very kind of, I don't want anybody interfering with it, so he burnt all his papers, and you know, that was, he felt everything was contained there. But obviously we've all moved on since then, and nobody's touched the Bach remedies. And I mean, they're very strict with upholding his message. The centre in Oxfordshire is where they do the training and sell the remedies, and still make some of them from the original flowers. And they were very, very strict on keeping that. But there's been loads of other flower essences all over the world that are the Australian bush ones that you've probably heard of, the Alaskan ones, the Californian ones. there's loads of them, and now more kind of angelic remedies and this remedy and dragon remedies, everything under the sun. And people think, oh well, you don't need that, but maybe we do now. We've moved into different times, but I mean, I still believe that there's not really a lot of difference with emotions then and now. We still have fear, we still have worry, doubt, arrogance. They're all things that we still have, but obviously people might want to look at other things, and because it was a different time. And if you read his writings, I mean, it is very obviously very old style, and you think, oh, that's strange, but it's kind of nice, I think. But so, I mean, although I would look at some other remedies, I would never mix them, and I think that's what they're really keen, that you don't mix them. As a registered practitioner, that you do have your code of ethics, that you work with the original ideas that he had of simplicity. And I think he really felt that we can do this for ourselves. We don't need doctors. We are in charge of our own health, which I think over the last few years we've really come to see since COVID, that actually it's down to us. And that was his idea, that everyone could maybe even make their own and just take them when they felt a little unwell. Obviously, if we're really ill, we have to, and we're very grateful to modern medicine, of course. But I think, as we know, it's got a very dark side to it, which is medication for everything, which is not the idea, really, I don't think. I mean, he got into trouble a lot in his time by saying a lot of these things. There's several letters in the books of his correspondences that say, if you continue with this, you will be struck off, and which he didn't really care. And he never was, so it was just a threat. But they didn't like it then, and they don't like it now. So,
No, and anyone who cares to do a little bit of digging into the history of medicine will discover many a person who made very good discoveries was persecuted
yes, yeah,
and got into very deep trouble because they challenged
yes,
the status quo. And so plus sachant, we are exactly where we are with the same issue today. But coming back to the astrology chart then. So you look at the moon sign, and that gives you an idea of an emotional state, which could be rebalanced. But what if you're looking at the moon and the moon looks happy and comfortable, but you see a grand cross involving the sun or Venus? What happens there?
So you would then look at what's going on there. If say it was a Sun-Saturn square, again, we don't know, and that's where we would talk to the client. But we would expect there to be maybe issues around fear or lack, so we would look at some flower essences to work with that, just to help alleviate that. Or if it was Venus, is there self-value? Are they not happy with their body? I think this is one that I'm looking at quite a bit now, because there's so much, bodies, and people hate the way they look and the way they are and the this and the that. So, that is one that I think can be really helpful. And one of the remedies there is what we call the crab apple remedy. And that can help because people want to be perfect. They've got to look like stars and celebrities and this and that. And of course, often it just brings unhappiness. So that, I think, can be seen in the chart, where you've got something there very, that's difficult for that person. I mean, usually I'm speaking to somebody, so I would talk about that. But sometimes people say, oh, can you just make me up a remedy? So I would then look at it myself and think, well, I think that's what's going on, and see what happens. And that's the beauty, again, because it doesn't matter if that isn't happening. It wouldn't change, and it wouldn't change. It would only help the person to align with their deeper purpose and their soul purpose. And it's not, people have sometimes said, oh, will it change me? Will it, I remember in a grief situation, somebody saying, Star of Bethlehem is one of the remedies for grief. and, you know, saying, oh, I don't know if I want to take this because it might make me not breathe anymore, you know. So it's kind of, no, it will just help you to balance. It won't change anything. So, but people do think it might do that, you know, and but it doesn't really, unless it's helping you to align with who you are. That's kind of, you know, the way it should be going. And so all of these, you know, planets that we look at, the sun or Mercury, often if someone's got a very difficult Mercury, you know, you maybe help there with remedies that would help that person focus, or maybe they're very kind of always doing what other people want them to do, and actually they need to be following their own path. So there again, they had a restless mind. You know, there is the remedy for that is white chestnut. It's a good one for sleeplessness as well. I don't know if you use that one. If you can't, you know, if people have got thoughts going round and round in their head, which lots of people do, particularly I think at the moment, there's so much going on. You know, there's a lot, I think, that people have to look at that. And so that would help maybe with that to calm down, worry, fear. Again, all of these things. And, you know, they could be shown there in the natal chart that, you know, you would work with.
So we know that there's an affinity between some remedies and the signs.
Yes.
Uh, is there a similar link between planets and remedies?
There isn't a connection as such, like this would be that, but you would say, you know, if you're having a Mars transit or a Pluto transit, you would look at particular remedies for that. Yes, you know, whatever's coming up on a Saturn transit or a Neptune transits. Well, they're all sometimes rather challenging, some of these, aren't they? So we'd look at what's actually going on there for people. Is it a loss of vitality, confusion, worry, fear, grief? Again, it could be with transits, you know. So that's
I I was once at a workshop. I, I think it was a first aid workshop for animals, and a very well-known, wonderful vet was talking about homeopathic remedies and also flower essences
yeah.
and how they could be used to help animals.
Yes.
But one thing she said that really stuck in my mind, and she's, which was when she was speaking, she said, people ask about efficacy and how helpful they are. She
Mm.
said, the trick with this is actually asking the right question so that
Mm.
you can give the right remedy.
Yeah.
Because if you assume that
Mm.
if you assume the wrong cause for whatever is going
Mm.
on,
Mm.
you
Mm.
will give the wrong remedy and you will not get the result. And I
Mm.
think, and funnily enough, interviewing a homeopath for my other channel, In the Light Growing Your Soul, years later, he said something very similar. So I would think that the beauty of having an astrology chart there with you
Yes.
is we know what an incredible tool of diagnosis this is.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So I imagine that it helps you get straight to the right question.
Yes. Yes. Because say it's a Saturn transit, you could talk about those things, and it's still up to the person. I mean, I've experienced, and I'm sure you have, where you talk about something and you think, well, this looks, and they say, oh, no, 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 everything's fine, everything's fine. There's a remedy for that as well. Everything's fine. You take the agrimony remedy for everything's fine. So that would, you know, be a starting point, I think, for someone. And we can't get people to talk about things they're not ready to, you know, to see, you know, and it's like in all of these things, the person has to kind of recognize it. And like you were saying in the example before, that or people have forgotten or they don't remember what they said or how they felt, and it's all and it is, I think, a delicate balance to kind of not push things onto people, and you know, just to say, well, you know, this transit's happening, and of course with astrology we can say, oh, and this a similar thing might have happened before 7 years, 40, you know, the whole cycle possibly, that kind of thing was, you know, and it's all this kind of, it's this wonderful kind of alchemy of when it all starts to work and they kind of really see, yeah, and have that hope that something could change and something could shift and that they could really be more authentic and true to who they are, really. And they certainly, flower essences help wonderfully on that journey, and people, I mean, it was interesting when you were talking before about the pictures of the flowers, because it just made me think of COVID times when I couldn't see people. None of us could. So we did everything on Zoom, and I couldn't really rush out to the post office to send remedies to people. So I sent photos, pictures, just as you were saying, and on WhatsApp, I sent, what I would have put in the bottle, 6 or 7 different remedies. I sent the pictures of the flowers and asked people to meditate on them just the same. And that worked brilliantly. And I really felt, wow, this is, well, we can't do it that way. We can do it in a different way, however, is possible. So
I once attended a workshop with the wonderful Felicity Warner, soul midwife and user of sacred oils. So this was a workshop on sacred oils, and it was on.
mm,
And I joined at the day before, because she said, "Well, come along," kind of thing. And I thought, yes, I think I will.
mm,
But consequently, I had not had time to get a hold of all of the oils that were going to be used in the lesson. So I had some of them, but I think I was missing two.
mm,
And exactly as you said, um,
yeah,
we meditated on all of the plants. And for the ones where we had the oils, that's wonderful. We were able to connect with the scent, which is how we use sacred oils.
mm,
But then for the two that were missing, um, that was very different.
mm,
And I was just thinking about the plant, and
mm, mm,
that's where I think it's very difficult to explain how this works, because it's one thing to say, well, you dilute, water carries memory, that you could kind of say, okay, that's fine.
yeah,
But when we're talking about no essence, no substance, and it's a mind thing, I would say that there we're going back to that link with the imagination, which of course is
yes,
what the doctrine of signatures is all about.
yeah,
What does this represent to you? What
mm,
does it say to you? Oh, it speaks to me of kidneys. It speaks to me. And so we have herbal medicine being born. So I think we need to be a little bit more open-minded and less dismissive of what appears to be impossible. And so this is why it's wonderful to have you here today,
yeah,
um, to encourage everyone to experiment and try
sure.
things that
Mm.
perhaps are a little bit left field.
Yes, although I kind of think now it's not as it was. I mean, I first studied the flower remedies in 2000, so it's quite a way, and it's come on a long way since then. Then saying to people, "Oh, have you heard of them?" It was, "Oh no," but now virtually everybody's heard of them, and you can buy them in Boots, and you can, and there are so many others, and people are really searching for natural healing methods, and you can't get more natural than homeopathy, and that's probably why, if you look on Wikipedia, it's so pseudo scientific, whatever. Same for the flower. They cannot, mainstream science at the moment, well, maybe never will, get their head around it, because vibrational healing is, well, we know, we understand, but it is becoming more, isn't it? There's more, the quantum
Yes,
world is opening up and people are seeing there's so much more there, and how they can work, and the
we
memory.
are much more aware of frequency and the importance.
Absolutely, vibrations, frequencies.
So this is why it's wonderful that you are able to be here today. Now, if people want to find you, how do they do that?
Yes, I have a website with my partner. It's yourguidinglight.org, and there's stuff about astrology and numerology and all sorts, and flower essences on there. And yes, and I'm very happy to, I can certainly continue with consultations on Zoom. In fact, I do quite a few now because people are all over the place, and I can send the remedies in the post to people. And so, the combination then with the chart as well is, because I think with the transits and the progressions, as we were saying earlier, it's just so important when you are at a stage in life where you do need extra help, even if maybe your chart isn't that challenging and you've got a so-called wonderful chart, though I don't know if anybody ever has a wonderful chart, but then maybe they need some help with actually getting going. So could be someone who can't just, is apathy and doesn't know what to do. So that can help then to really move forward. And with the difficult transits and the difficult astrology at the moment, and I think, with, as we were saying a while ago, there's so much stuff going on and people just can't focus on their life, and the fear, it's almost this perpetual cycle of fear and anxiety that's pumped out. And that is really difficult for so many people. So I think it's vital that we can use these things, even if it's just a rescue remedy, which can be. Although I always say to people, "Where's your, if you've got rescue remedy?" They say, "Yes." "Where is it?" "Oh, in my cupboard somewhere." It's no good in there. It needs to be out and in your pocket or in your bag, so that you can take it if you just feel overwhelmed with what's going on, which I think a lot of us do a lot of the time. It's difficult, challenging times we're in. Also very exciting times, but we want to kind of be the best we can be and focus on why we're here and what our purpose is. And that's the best way forward, I think, to navigate through all of this.
Perfect. And a link to your website is going to be in the description box so that everyone can find you. Christine, thank you so much for your time today.
Yes, it was lovely to talk with you, and yeah, all the best. Thank you.
Thank you all for watching. Next time we're going to be looking at Juno. Until then, goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye.